project seems more vulnerable to conspiracy theories and outright fabrication.
Yeah, well, I think the concept of non-cooperation really needs to be thought about.
The lobby looked like the plane hit the lobby.
We will defend ourselves and our future against terror and lawless violence.
I think a bomb went off in the lobby first, then a plane hit the building. Then another plane hit the other building. But when I was coming through the doors on the other side of the Trade Center, something, either they blew the lobby up or something, because it blew the glass out of the doors and knocked us all down.
In the Second World War, we learned there is no isolation from evil. We affirm that some crimes are so terrible, they offend humanity itself. And we resolved that the aggressions and ambitions of the wicked must be opposed early, decisively, and collectively before they threaten us all.
Because when I look at, our imprinted behavior pattern is to protest and demonstrate against whatever it is that we're opposing in a political society type of sense, and to organize people and energy to do this protesting and this demonstrating. But when you really look at it, we're cooperating with the system that we're protesting against.
During the time that the airplane coming in to the Pentagon, there was a young man who would come in and say to the Vice President, the plane is 50 miles out, the plane is 30 miles out. And when it got down to the plane is 10 miles out, the young man also said to the Vice President, do the orders still stand? And the Vice President turned and whipped his neck around and said, of course the orders still stand. Have you heard anything to the contrary? Well, at the time I didn't know what all that meant. And
the flight you're referring to is the
flight that came into the Pentagon.
Yeah.
We thought that plane might hit the White House. It was headed this way, and that's why the Secret Service evacuated me from my office in the West in the morning down into a shelter in the basement. When I was in the shelter, calling the president, Pentagon had been hit, but the plane that was headed in did a complete 360 and went back in and struck the Pentagon.
So when I look at like civil disobedience, whether it's violent or non-violent, it's cooperating. All right, it's cooperating with the system itself. So if you're protesting and you get the permits, you're cooperating, all right? And I'm not judging this, it's just you're cooperating. And you're cooperating when you buy magic markers to make the signs, the protest signs. You're cooperating when you buy water, the little bottles of water. You're cooperating when you organize the people, mass movements of people, and buy the logistics.
But getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. I said, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
One of the guys, he can tell you I'm okay, all right? Here, hold on. You want to call your mother or something?
If it's violent civil disobedience, you're cooperating. You're still doing the same thing. You're getting whatever it is for your demonstration, and you're cooperating in the economic system. And then when you clash with the state, you're cooperating with the state's little war games and how it works out its little processes to contain these kinds of demonstrations. See, so the whole thing is based upon cooperation.
We are seeing video today that only Hollywood could have produced.
So it seems like if everything we're doing is cooperating with them, then we need to really examine and think about non-cooperation, because if we're cooperating with them, we're giving them our energy. So it really becomes, to me, a matter of, well, how do we not cooperate with them? How do we not give them that energy? And we can only not give them that energy by not cooperating with them.
We have seen the Twin Towers come apart right in front of our eyes. We've seen aircraft smashing into the side of them. Just now we saw another building as a part of that complex go down. It is so unbelievable, it is so surreal, that it's very hard for most Americans, most anyone in the world, to be able to grasp what is really taking place here.
And I figure, well, that's all based upon how we've been imprinted to perceive reality. You know, and how do I, you know, and if I'm not using my intelligence to think as clearly and coherently about the issues that I'm confronted with personally or society-wise, right? If I'm just being incoherent, emotional, a reactionary, emotional believer, then I'm cooperating with them. It doesn't matter how much I protest. It doesn't matter what else I do. I'm cooperating with them. See, so we need to be thinking in terms of how do we not give them the energy? How do we not cooperate with them? You know, does it mean, you know, I mean, yeah, so I really think this is something that the thinkers need to explore. How do, I mean, on, you know, on one level you can say, well, try to organize 30% of the population not to spend any money on the same day as an economic statement, and you're not cooperating with them because you're not feeding into the monetary system. So that's one way of non-cooperation. All right, where people can stay at home and keep their identities and do all the stuff. That's one way of non-cooperation. All right, another way of non-cooperation is to not emotionally react, to think things out before we act. You know, so, you know, it's like another way of non-cooperation is, you know, if our lives are dominated, if basically how we participate in this reality and perceive this reality is based upon our own insecurities and fears, well, then obviously we should examine those insecurities and fears and recognize where they come from, all right, and not let them dominate our lives anymore. That's a way of not cooperating. So non-cooperation, I think, really needs to be explored versus this romanticized civil disobedience thing, because it's not working.
Before.
About 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, hundreds of construction workers came down there, maybe thousands, and volunteered. And the uplift of that was just tremendous. And I knew how dangerous it was. There were fires below the ground of 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit and more.
You'd get down below and you'd see molten steel running down the channel mills, like you're in a foundry.
We must speak the truth about terror. Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories concerning the attacks of September the 11th. Malicious lies that attempt to shift the blame away from the terrorists themselves, away from the guilty,